The darkness of space held no fear for Commander Zexthal as he stood on the bridge of his mighty ship, the Dreadclaw. His massive form cast long shadows across the biometal floor. 9 feet tall and covered in natural armor that could stop most weapons, he was the perfect example of what 3,000 years of evolution on the deadliest world in the galaxy could create. His yellow eyes, each the size of a human fist, scanned the star charts floating before him. The holographic display showed hundreds of conquered worlds, all marked with the crimson symbol of the Cathara Empire. Each world represented another species that had bowed before the might of his people. Each conquest had been easier than the last. The bridge crew moved around him with practiced efficiency. Every Cathara on board was a living weapon, bred for war and trained from birth to kill. Their claws could tear through steel. Their armor could withstand the vacuum of space. Their strength could crush bones with a simple squeeze. They were the apex predators of the galaxy. They knew it. Zexthal flexed his razor-sharp claws as he remembered his last battle. The crystal beings of Zenthar had put up a good fight for exactly 12 minutes. Their energy weapons had barely scratched Cathara armor, and their fragile bodies had shattered like glass under his warrior's assault. The survivors now worked in the deep mines of Zarian Prime. Were grateful to be alive. Were Cast Prime Veltar. Approached the commander with heavy footsteps that echoed through the bridge. His scarred hide told the story of 100 battles, and the bones of defeated enemies hung from his belt like trophies. He was old for a Cathara warrior, but his strength had only grown with age. Commander Veltar's voice rumbled like grinding stone. The scouts have returned from the Outer Rim. They bring interesting news. Zexthal turned his massive head toward his second-in-command. Speak. A new world has been found. Small, blue, unremarkable. But the inhabitants have achieved space travel. Veltar paused, his mandibles clicking with what might have been amusement. They call themselves humans. The commander's eyes narrowed. Another spacefaring species was always worth investigating. Most races that reached the stars had some useful technology or resources. The weak ones made good slaves. The strong ones made worthy additions to the Empire's warrior caste. Show me, Zexthal commanded. The holographic display changed to show a small solar system on the edge of nowhere. The third planet glowed blue and white, covered in water and strange swirling clouds. It looked almost peaceful compared to the hellish landscapes that Cathara called home. The scouts say this world is what they call a Deathworld, Veltar continued. Violent weather, dangerous animals, unstable ground that shakes and splits open. The inhabitants have survived all of this. Zexthal almost laughed. A Deathworld, this pretty blue marble, was supposed to be dangerous? He had been born on Zarian Prime, where the very air could melt flesh, and the weakest predator could tear apart most spacefaring species. Where acid rain fell every day, and the ground was so poisonous that only the strongest could survive. Where every breath was a battle, and every step meant fighting for life. The Cathara had evolved on a world that made survival impossible for lesser beings. Their ancestors had crawled from seas of liquid metal and climbed mountains of razor-sharp glass. They had learned to hunt creatures that could destroy entire cities. They had become living weapons because anything less meant death. What do we know of their military strength? Zexthal asked, though he was not really worried. No species from a single world had ever posed a real threat to the Cathara Empire. Veltar's mandibles clicked again. They use metal ships powered by chemical reactions. Their weapons fire small metal projectiles or simple energy beams. They appear to be divided into many small groups that often fight each other. The commander nodded. It was always the same story. A young species discovers space travel and thinks they are ready to join the galaxy. They build their little ships and venture out into the darkness, never realizing what waits for them in the void. The Cathara had encountered dozens of such races over the centuries. Most submitted without a fight once they saw what they faced. The stubborn ones learned quickly enough. How many ships do they have? Zexthal asked. Perhaps a few hundred scattered across their system. Nothing that could challenge even a single Cathara battle group. Zexthal walked to the great window that looked out into space. Stars stretched in all directions, most of them marking systems under Cathara control. His empire spanned half the galaxy, built on the simple truth that the strong ruled the weak. It had always been this way, and it always would be. The humans would learn this truth soon enough. They would see the might of the Cathara and understand their place in the universe. Some might even be useful. The scouts had mentioned that humans appeared to be physically weak, but showed signs of intelligence. Perhaps they could serve as technicians or researchers, working under proper Cathara supervision. "Prepare the 47th Conquest Fleet," Zexthal ordered. "We will investigate this new species personally." Beltar straightened to attention. "How many ships, Commander?" 20 should be sufficient. It was overkill, really. The Cathara had conquered entire star systems with fewer ships. But Zexthal believed in making strong first impressions. When the humans saw 20 massive bioships appearing in their sky, they would understand immediately that resistance was pointless. The bridge crew began their preparations with practiced efficiency. Messages were sent throughout the ship and to the other vessels in the fleet. Warriors sharpened their weapons and checked their armor. Engineers tended to the living ships, feeding them nutrients and ensuring their bioweapons were ready for battle. Zexthal watched it all with satisfaction. This was how the galaxy worked. The strong took what they wanted from the weak. The Cathara were the strongest, so everything belonged to them eventually. It was natural law, as unchangeable as gravity or time. He thought about the humans and their blue world. They had managed to survive on what they called a Deathworld and reach the stars. That showed some promise. Perhaps they would be more interesting than the usual primitive species the Cathara encountered. Perhaps they would provide a few minutes of entertainment before surrendering. The commander's communication device buzzed with an incoming message from the High Command on Zarian Prime. The holographic image of Supreme War Leader Next Goal appeared, his ancient form covered in scars from 1,000 battles. Commander Zexthal, the Supreme War Leader's voice, carried the authority of absolute power. "The Council has reviewed the scout reports. These humans interest us. Bring back samples for study. They prove useful. We may allow some to survive as servants." "It will be done, Supreme War Leader," Zexthal replied with proper respect. The message ended, leaving Zexthal alone with his thoughts. The humans had no idea what was coming their way. Soon they would join the long list of species that had learned the hard truth about the galaxy. The strong ruled, and the Cathara were the strongest of all. As the great bioships began their journey toward the small blue world, Zexthal allowed himself a moment of anticipation. It had been too long since the last conquest. His warriors were getting restless, and nothing kept them sharp like a good battle. Even if this one would be over quickly, the humans were about to discover that their little Deathworld had not prepared them for the real dangers that lurked in the darkness between stars. They were about to meet the true apex predators of the galaxy. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the human space station Unity, watching the alien ships approach through the viewport. 20 massive vessels moved through space like living creatures, their hulls pulsing with a rhythm that reminded him of a heartbeat. Each ship was larger than anything humanity had ever built, and they moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so big. The alien fleet had appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 days ago. At first, the deep space monitors had thought it was some kind of natural phenomenon. Nothing that large should be able to move through space. Then the energy readings came in, and everything changed. These were ships, powered by technology that human science could barely understand. Jake had been chosen to lead the first contact team because of his experience and his calm nature. At 42, he had spent most of his adult life in space, first as a Marine in the outer colonies, and then as a diplomatic officer. He had seen combat on Mars during the mining disputes, and had commanded rescue operations in the asteroid belt. He was one of the few humans who had experienced dealing with dangerous situations in space. Standing beside him was Dr. Lisa Chen, a xenobiologist who had spent her career studying the possibility of alien life. She was small and quiet, but her mind was sharp as a razor. She had written dozens of papers about what first contact might look like, and now she was about to find out if any of her theories were right. Dr. Ryan Park completed their small team. He was a cultural specialist who spoke 12 human languages and understood how different societies worked. His job was to help avoid misunderstandings that could lead to conflict. He was nervous, constantly adjusting his glasses and checking his tablet for the 100th time. The alien ships had stopped just outside Earth's orbital defense grid. They had not responded to any attempts at communication, but they had not attacked either. They simply waited, as if giving humanity time. To prepare for what was coming, Jake pressed the communication button on his console. Unity Control, this is Morrison. Are we ready to receive our guests? The voice of Commander Sarah Wilson crackled through the speakers. Ready as we can be, Jake. The shuttle bay is prepared, and security teams are in position. Try not to start an interplanetary war, will you? Jake smiled despite his nervousness. Sarah had been his friend for years, and her dry humor always helped him stay calm. I'll do my best. A new voice cut through the communication channel. It was harsh and deep, speaking in a language that sounded like grinding metal. The translation computer worked for several seconds before producing words in English. Soft creatures. Of the blue world, we are the Cathera. We come to speak with those who lead your kind. Prepare to receive our delegation. We will board your floating structure. Dr. Chen looked up from her instruments. Jake, their bioreadings are incredible. Whatever these beings are, they're physically much more powerful than humans. Their bone density alone is 5 times ours. Jake nodded. He had expected as much from the size of their ships. Any species that could build vessels like those would probably be stronger than humans. The question was whether they were also more intelligent, and whether they had come in peace. The alien shuttle that approached Unity was smaller than their main ships, but still impressive. It moved without any visible engines, floating through space as if gravity did not affect it.
Twin.
It docked with the station. The entire structure shook from the impact. Jake and his team waited in the main conference room. They had prepared gifts for the aliens, samples of human art, music recordings, and scientific data about Earth and its people. The idea was to show that humanity was civilized and worth talking to rather than conquering. The airlock opened with a hiss of escaping air. What walked through the door made Jake's breath catch in his throat. The alien was enormous, nearly 9 feet tall and covered in what looked like natural armor. Its skin was dark gray and appeared to be as hard as metal. 4 arms ending in razor-sharp claws hung at its sides, and its head was shaped like a predator's skull with yellow eyes that seemed to glow in the station's light. When it moved, Jake could hear the click of claws on the metal floor behind. The first alien came to more, equally impressive and intimidating. They wore no clothing that Jake could see, but their natural armor seemed to serve the same purpose. Strange symbols were carved into their hide, probably marking rank or achievement. The largest alien stepped forward and spoke. Its voice was like rocks grinding together, deep and harsh. The translation came a moment later. I am Warcast Prime Veltar of the Cathara Empire. You will identify the leader among you. Jake stepped forward, fighting to keep his voice steady. I am Captain Jake Morrison, representing the United Earth government. Welcome to our system. We come in peace and hope to establish friendly relations. Alien's head tilted slightly, as if confused by Jake's words. Peace? You speak of peace when you are clearly the weaker species? This is unusual. Dr. Chen moved closer to Jake, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. We are honored to meet you, Veltar. We have prepared gifts to show our desire. For friendship and cooperation. The alien looked at the table where they had placed their offerings. Art prints, music recordings, and data crystals containing human knowledge sat carefully arranged. Veltar approached and picked up one of the art prints with surprising gentleness, given the size of his claws. What is the purpose of these objects? He asked. Dr. Park cleared his throat nervously. They represent our culture. The art shows how we see beauty. The music demonstrates our emotions. The data contains our scientific knowledge offered freely. As a sign of trust, Veltar set down the art print and turned back to face the humans. You offer knowledge freely? You expect nothing in return? We hope to learn about your people in exchange, Jake said. Knowledge shared between our species could benefit everyone. The alien was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, His voice carried a tone that the translator could not quite capture. Your species confuses me, humans. You are weak. Your bodies are soft. Your claws are pathetic. Yet you do not immediately submit to our superior strength. Why? Jake felt a chill run down his spine. This was not going the way they had hoped. We believe that different species can work together, each contributing their strengths. We may not be as physically powerful as your people, but we have other abilities. Other abilities? Veltar's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Show me these abilities, soft human. Jake glanced at his teammates. Dr. Chen gave him a slight nod, encouraging him to continue. We are good at solving problems, at adapting to new situations. We work together as teams to accomplish what individuals cannot do alone. The alien's yellow eyes narrowed. Words. You speak pretty words. But the galaxy is ruled by strength. The strong take what they want from the weak. The weak serve or die. This is natural law, perhaps Jake said carefully, but we have found that cooperation often achieves more than domination. Veltar's claws extended fully, each one longer than Jake's fingers. You dare to question the natural order? You dare to suggest that weakness is equal to strength? The tension in the room suddenly became thick enough to cut. Jake could see his security team tensing through the observation windows. But he knew their weapons would be useless against these creatures. If this went wrong, it would mean disaster for both species. I am challenging you to single combat, human Jake Morrison, Veltar announced, his voice echoing through the conference room. You will face me with your natural abilities against mine. When you lose, your species will acknowledge Kithara's superiority and submit to our rule. Dr. Chen grabbed Jake's arm. You can't be serious about this. Look at him. Jake looked at the massive alien warrior, with his natural armor and deadly claws. Any sane person would refuse such a challenge. It would be suicide to fight this creature. Hand-2-hand. But Jake also understood what was really happening here. This was not just about him, or even about this moment. This was about the future of humanity. If he refused, the aliens would see it as proof that humans were cowards who deserved to be enslaved. If he accepted and lost, the result would be the same. But if he accepted and somehow won... Jake took a deep breath and stepped away from his teammates. I accept your challenge, Veltar. The alien's mandibles clicked again, this time definitely. In amusement? Good, we will fight now, here, with no weapons but what nature gave us. Prepare to learn your place in the galaxy, soft human. The cargo bay of Unity Station had been cleared to make room for the fight. Jake Morrison stood at one end of the large space, rolling his shoulders and trying to keep his breathing steady. Across from him, Warcast Prime Veltar stretched his massive frame, his claws scraping against the metal floor with each movement. Jake had removed his uniform, jacket, and stood in just his basic clothing. He looked small and fragile compared to the 9-foot alien warrior. Dr. Chen and Dr. Park watched from behind a safety barrier, their faces pale with worry. Through the observation windows, Jake could see other station personnel gathering too. Witness what many thought would be his death. Veltar's yellow eyes gleamed with confidence. He had fought hundreds of battles across the galaxy and had never been defeated in single combat. His natural armor could stop most weapons, and his claws could tear through steel. This human looked barely strong enough to lift a heavy box, let alone fight a Kithara warrior. Are you ready to die, soft human? Veltar asked, his voice echoing through the cargo bay. Jake flexed his hands and shifted his weight slightly. Years of military training had taught him to stay calm before a fight, even when the odds were impossible. Humans can do, the alien laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Very well, let us begin your education. Veltar charged forward with surprising speed for something so large. His forearms spread wide, claws extended, ready to tear Jake apart in seconds. Most species would have frozen in terror at the sight of the Kithara warrior in full attack mode. But Jake was not most species. He was human. Instead of trying to meet the alien's charge head-on, Jake dropped low and rolled to the side. Veltar's claws whistled through the air where Jake's head had been just moments before. The alien's momentum carried him past Jake and into the far wall with a thunderous crash. Veltar spun around, confused. His prey should have been dead already. How had the weak human moved so quickly? Jake was already moving again, staying low, and keeping his distance. He had studied the video recordings of Kithara physiology that their scouts had provided. The aliens were incredibly strong and well-armored, but they were also heavy and built for power rather than speed. Their natural weapons were devastating in close combat. But they had to get close first. The alien warrior charged again, this time trying to corner Jake against the wall. His claws slashed through the air in deadly arcs, each strike capable of cutting a human in half. But Jake was not there when the claws arrived. He ducked under one swing, rolled away from another, and used his smaller size to slip between Veltar's arms as he moved past the alien. Jake drove his elbow hard into the back of Veltar's knee. The joint was one of the few places where the Kithara's natural armor was thinner, and Jake's strike hit exactly where it would do the most damage. Veltar stumbled but did not fall. The alien spun around faster than Jake expected. Backhanding him across the chest with one massive arm, Jake flew backward and hit the floor hard, rolling several times before coming to a stop. Pain shot through his ribs, and he tasted blood in his mouth. Veltar advanced slowly, confident now that he had landed a solid hit. "You are quick for a soft creature, but speed will not save you. I am Kithara. I am Apex Predator." Jake pushed himself to his feet, wiping blood from his lip. His chest ached, but nothing felt broken. He had taken worse hits during his marine training, though admittedly not from 9-foot alien warriors. "Maybe," Jake said, circling away from the alien. "But being an apex predator and being a good fighter are not the same thing." Veltar's mandibles clicked in anger. "You dare insult me?" The alien charged again, but this time Jake was ready. Instead of dodging to the side, he moved forward and dropped to the ground, sliding between Veltar's legs. As he passed underneath the alien, he grabbed one of Veltar's ankles and twisted hard. The Kithara warrior crashed to the floor with a tremendous bang that shook the entire cargo bay. Before Veltar could recover, Jake was on his back, using the alien's own weight against him. He wrapped his arm around Veltar's thick neck and squeezed. Veltar thrashed wildly, trying to reach Jake with his claws, but the human had positioned himself where the alien's arms could not reach. The Kithara was incredibly strong, but all that strength was useless if he could not bring it to bear on his target. "Impossible," Veltar gasped as Jake's grip tightened. "You are weak. You have no claws, no armor, no natural weapons." Jake's voice was calm despite his effort. "You're right. We don't have any of those things. But we have something else. We have brains. And we know how to use them." Veltar tried to roll over and crush Jake beneath his weight, but Jake had anticipated this move. He shifted his position and maintained his grip, using the alien's own movements to tighten the hold around his neck. "Your people conquered the galaxy by being stronger than everyone else," Jake continued, his words measured despite his exertion. "But you never learned to fight smart. You just relied on your natural advantages." The alien's struggles grew weaker as Jake's chokehold cut off his air supply. Veltar had never encountered an opponent who fought like this, using leverage and technique instead of brute force. His warrior training had taught him to overpower enemies, not to outthink them. "We humans had to learn differently," Jake said. "Our world taught us that being strong was not enough. We had to be clever. We had to work together. We had to adapt." Veltar's vision began to blur as consciousness faded. In his last moments of awareness, he realized something that shook him to his core. The human had not won through superior strength or better weapons. He had won through superior tactics and the ability to think during combat. The great Kithara warrior collapsed, unconscious but alive. Jake released his grip and rolled away, breathing heavily. His ribs ached where Veltar had hit him, but he was victorious. The cargo bay was silent for a long moment. Then Dr. Chen's voice broke the quiet. "Jake, are you all right?" Jake pushed himself to his feet, still catching his breath. "I'm fine. How is he?" Dr. Chen ran her medical scanner over the unconscious alien. "He's alive. His breathing is returning. Too normal? He should wake up in a few minutes." Through the observation windows, Jake could see the faces of the station crew. They looked as shocked as he felt. No one had expected the fight to end this way. A human had just defeated a Cathara warrior in single combat, something that was supposed to be impossible. The other two, Cathara warriors who had come with Veltar, stood frozen at the edge of the cargo bay. Their leader, the strongest among them, had been beaten by a creature they considered weak and primitive. Their entire worldview was cracking. When Veltar finally regained consciousness, he looked up at Jake with confusion in his yellow eyes. "How?" he whispered. "How did you defeat me?" Jake extended his hand to help the alien sit up. "'Cause you underestimated what it means to be human. You saw our physical weakness and thought that was all there was to see." Veltar stared at the offered hand for a moment before accepting the help. As Jake pulled him to a sitting position, the alien warrior spoke again. "Your species is not what we expected." "No," Jake agreed. "And neither are yours. This fight didn't have to happen. We could have been allies instead of enemies." The alien was quiet for a long time, thinking about what had just occurred. Finally, he spoke. "My people will not believe this. It's a soft human defeating a Cathara warrior. It challenges everything we know about strength and weakness." Jake sat down across from Veltar, no longer seeing him as just an enemy. "Maybe it's time your people learned something new. Maybe it's time they discovered that there are different kinds of strength." But even as Jake spoke these words, he knew the real conflict was just beginning. The Cathara Empire would not accept this defeat quietly. They would send more ships, more warriors, and they would come for revenge. The fight in the cargo bay had been just the first battle in what would become a war that would change both species forever. Commander Zextal stood in his command chamber aboard the Dreadclaw, staring at the message that had just arrived from the first contact team. The words on the screen seemed impossible, but they came directly from Warcast Prime Veltar himself. "Human defeated me in single combat." Zextal read the message 3 times before the meaning sank in. A human, one of those soft creatures from the blue world, had beaten Veltar in a fair fight. Veltar, who had conquered 12 worlds personally. Veltar, who had never lost a battle in 3 centuries of warfare. Veltar was considered one of the finest warriors in the entire Cathara Empire. The commander's claws scraped against the metal as his hands clenched into fists. This had to be some kind of trick. Humans must have used weapons or poison, or some other form of cheating. No species could defeat a Cathara warrior with nothing but their natural abilities. But Veltar's message continued with details that made trickery seem unlikely. The fight had been observed by multiple witnesses. The human had used no weapons or tools. He had simply fought better, using speed and intelligence where Veltar had relied on strength and natural weapons. A soft chime indicated another incoming message. This one came from the High Command on Zarian Prime, Supreme War Leader Nexgel S. Ancient face appeared on the screen, his scarred features twisted with anger. "Commander Zextal," the Supreme War Leader's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Explain to me how one of our finest warriors was defeated by a primitive species we plan to enslave." Zextal straightened to attention. "Supreme War Leader, I am still gathering information." The initial reports seem impossible, but Veltar would not lie about such a matter. "No, he would not," Nexgel agreed grimly. "Which means these humans are more dangerous than we anticipated. You will proceed with the invasion as planned, but with additional caution. We cannot allow word of this defeat to spread through the Empire." The message ended, leaving Zextal alone with his thoughts. He had commanded fleets for 2 centuries and had never encountered a situation like this. Every species the Cathara had met fell into predictable patterns. The weak ones surrendered immediately. The strong ones fought briefly before being overwhelmed. None had ever displayed the kind of tactical thinking that Veltar described. The bridge door opened, and his tactical officer, Commander Kexron, entered with urgent news. "Commander, long-range sensors are detecting movement throughout the human system. Their ships are taking defensive positions." Zextal moved to the command bridge where the tactical display showed the solar system in detail. Red dots marked human vessels as they moved from their various stations and colonies toward Earth. It was not the chaotic panic he had expected from a primitive species. Instead, the human fleet movements showed organization and purpose. "Many ships are they deploying?" Zextal asked. "Approximately 200 vessels of various sizes," Kexron reported. Most appear to be lightly armed, but they are positioning themselves in defensive formations around their homeworld. The commander studied the display with growing interest. The human ships were small and fragile compared to Kythera biovessels, but their positioning showed tactical awareness. They were not simply clustering around their planet in fear. Instead, they had created overlapping fields of fire and positioned their stronger ships to protect the weaker ones. "Signal the fleet," Zexthal commanded. "We advance on the human homeworld. All ships are to maintain combat readiness, but do not fire unless fired upon. I want to see what these creatures do when faced with overwhelming force." The 20 Kythera ships moved deeper into the solar system like a pack of predators. Each vessel was a living creature, bred for war and capable of healing damage in battle. Their bioweapons could tear apart conventional ships, and their organic armor could withstand tremendous punishment. As they approached Earth, the human response surprised Zexthal again. Instead of massing their ships for a desperate last stand, the humans began to spread out through the system. Some headed toward the asteroid belt, others moved toward the outer planets, and a few even accelerated away from the sun entirely. "What are they doing?" Kexron wondered aloud. "Are they retreating?" Zexthal watched the tactical display with growing unease. This was not retreat. This was something else entirely.
Oh.
The humans were positioning themselves throughout their entire star system, as if they planned to use the planets and asteroids as weapons or shields. The first attack came from an unexpected direction. A group of human ships hiding behind Earth's moons suddenly accelerated at maximum speed. Not toward the Kythera fleet, but toward a large asteroid that had been slowly drifting toward the inner system. "What are they targeting?" Zexthal demanded. His sensors officer, a young warrior named Dexvolum, worked frantically at his console. "They appear to be attaching some kind of devices to the asteroid, Commander. The rock is changing course." Zexthal watched in fascination as the massive asteroid began to move faster, its trajectory shifting to intercept the Kythera fleet. The humans had turned a piece of space debris into a weapon, using their ships to push it toward their enemies. "Clever," he admitted grudgingly. "Order evasive maneuvers. That asteroid could damage our ships if it hits." But the asteroid was just the beginning. As the Kythera fleet moved to avoid the first attack, more asteroids began changing course. The humans had somehow calculated the exact timing and positioning needed to turn their entire asteroid belt into a massive weapon system. "Commander!" Dexvolum called out urgently. "I'm detecting energy buildups throughout the system." The humans have placed devices on dozens of asteroids and several small moons. Stel felt a chill run through his body. The humans were not fighting, like any species he had ever encountered. They were not trying to meet the Kythera in direct combat, where their physical disadvantages would doom them. Instead, they were using the entire solar system as their weapon. The second phase of the human attack began when their ships started launching small objects toward the Kythera fleet. At first, Zexthal thought they were missiles, but the trajectory was wrong. The objects were not aimed at his ships. They were aimed at empty space ahead of his fleet. "What are those projectiles?" he asked. Dexvol's voice was tense as he replied. "They appear to be small metal objects, Commander. Thousands of them, scattered throughout our flight path." Hit Zexthal like a physical blow. The humans had filled the space ahead of his fleet with debris. At the speeds his ships were traveling, even tiny pieces of metal would hit with tremendous force. The Kythera bioships could heal from many kinds of damage, but they were not designed to withstand continuous impacts from high-velocity debris. "All ships reduce speed immediately," Zexthal ordered. "Plot new courses around the debris field." Slowing down made his ships easier targets for the human vessels that were now attacking from multiple directions. The human ships were fast and maneuverable, darting in to fire their weapons before disappearing behind asteroids or planets. The Kythera returned fire with their bioweapons, but the humans refused to engage in direct combat. They used hit-and-run tactics, striking quickly and then retreating before the more powerful Kythera ships could respond effectively. "This is impossible," Kexron muttered, as another human attack damaged one of their escort vessels. "They are fighting like cowards, but somehow winning?" Zexthal was beginning to understand something that shook him to his core. The humans were not fighting like cowards. They were fighting like intelligent beings who understood their limitations and worked within them. They had turned their entire star system into a fortress and were using tactics that the Cathara had never encountered. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Zexthal was facing an enemy that might actually defeat him. Not through superior strength or better weapons, but through superior thinking and the ability to use everything around them as a tool for survival. The war was just beginning. And already the Kithara were learning that they had underestimated their prey in ways they were only beginning to understand. 6 months had passed since the first battle in Earth's solar system, and Commander Zextel found himself in a situation he had never imagined possible. His mighty fleet, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was slowly losing a war against a species they had dismissed as weak and primitive. The humans fought unlike any enemy the Cathara had ever faced. They did not meet the alien warriors in open battle where superior strength and natural weapons would give the Cathara victory. Instead, they turned everything around them into weapons. Asteroids became missiles. Empty space became a trap filled with debris. Even their own moon had been hollowed out and turned into a massive fortress. Zexthal stood in his command chamber, studying reports from across the solar system. But 3 of his bioships had been destroyed, not by enemy weapons, but by human tactics that used the laws of physics against them. The humans had calculated exactly how to crash asteroids into his vessels at speeds that even Cathara bioarmor could not withstand. Warcast Prime Veltar entered the chamber. Moving slowly due to injuries he had received in the latest battle, the proud warrior who had once seemed invincible now carried scars from a human weapon that fired small metal pellets at incredible speeds. The humans called it a railgun, and it could punch through Cathara armor like it was made of soft clay. Commander Veltar said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I have completed my analysis of the human military structure. You need to see this. Zexthal turned from the tactical display to face his subordinate. What have you learned? Humans do not fight as individuals, Veltar explained. Every action they take is coordinated with hundreds of others. When we attack one position, they have already prepared 3 different responses. When we change our tactics, they adapt faster than should be possible. The commander's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. They share information in real time across their entire fleet? More than that, Veltar continued. They share ideas. Every human soldier who learns something new about fighting us immediately teaches it to all the others. Their weakness becomes strength because they learn from every mistake and never repeat. Zexthal had noticed this pattern himself. Early in the war, his forces had achieved several victories by exploiting human weaknesses. But each weakness was corrected within days, and the humans never fell for the same trick twice. It was as if they were fighting a single organism with thousands of bodies, rather than a collection of individuals. The chamber door opened, and Sub-Commander Kexron rushed in with urgent news. Commander, we have received a transmission from Zarian Prime. Supreme War Leader Nexgal demands an immediate report on our progress. Zexthal felt his stomach sink. How could he explain to the High Command that his fleet was losing to a species they had planned to enslave? How could he admit that everything the Cathara believed about strength and conquest was being proven wrong by these soft humans? Compose a message, Zexthal ordered reluctantly. Tell the Supreme War Leader that the humans are proving more resilient than expected. Request additional forces. But even as he gave the order, Zexthal wondered if more ships would make any difference. The humans had already shown they could turn superior numbers into a disadvantage by using the enemy's size and strength against them. Hours later, Zexthal was studying tactical reports. An alarm sounded throughout the ship. His sensors officer called out from the bridge. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the humans. They are requesting to speak with you directly. Zexthal made his way to the bridge, curious about what the humans wanted to say. The main screen activated, showing the face of Captain Jake Morrison, the human who had defeated Veltar in single combat. The man looked tired, but not defeated. Commander Zexthal, Jake said, his voice calm despite the ongoing war, I think. It's time we talked. You wish to surrender? Zexthal asked, though he suspected the answer would disappoint him. Jake shook his head. No, I want to show you something. Something about your people and mine that I think you need to understand. The human captain gestured to someone off-screen, and the image changed to show a recording. It was footage of a Cathara bioship that had been damaged in battle. The ship was healing itself, its living hull slowly closing wounds and rebuilding. Damaged sections. Your ships are incredible, Jake continued. Biological technology that can repair itself and adapt to damage. We've never seen anything like it. Zextal was confused. Why are you showing me this? The image changed again, this time showing human engineers working on their own damaged vessel. They were cutting away broken sections and replacing them, with new parts working together in teams to repair what seemed like hopeless damage. Because, Jake explained, I want you to see that we're not so different. Your ships heal themselves. Our ships get healed by us working together. Both methods achieve the same goal, just in different ways. The recording showed more scenes of humans working together, soldiers sharing ammunition in battle, engineers combining their knowledge to solve technical problems, medical teams saving both human and Cathara, wounded without discrimination. Your people are strong as individuals, Jake continued. Ours are strong as a group. You've spent 3,000 years conquering others because you thought individual strength was all that mattered. But what if you're wrong? What if the strongest thing in the universe is not a single powerful being, but many different beings working together? Zextal stared at the screen, his mind struggling to process what he was hearing. You suggest that weakness can become strength through cooperation? I'm suggesting that what you call weakness might actually be a different kind of strength, Jake replied. Your warriors are incredible fighters, but they fight alone. Our soldiers are weaker individually, but they fight as one mind and many bodies. The transmission showed new footage, this time of human and Cathara wounded being treated together in a makeshift medical facility. Human doctors worked alongside captured Cathara biospecialists, sharing knowledge to save lives from both species. Of your people are already starting to understand, Jake said quietly. The ones we've captured have seen how we work together. They're beginning to question whether conquest is really the only way to survive in the galaxy. Zextal felt something crack inside his mind. For 3,000 years, the Cathara had believed that strength meant domination. The strong ruled the weak because that was natural law. But these humans were showing him that there might be other laws, other ways of being strong. What are you proposing? Zextal asked, his voice barely above a whisper. A choice, Jake answered. You can continue this war until both our species are destroyed, or you can help us build something new. Something neither of our peoples could create alone. The transmission ended, leaving Zextal alone with his thoughts. Around him, his bridge crew stood silent, many of them clearly affected by what they had seen. For the first time in their lives, they were questioning everything they had been taught about strength and weakness. Warcast. Prime Veltar approached the commander. Sir, what are your orders? Zextal looked out at the stars, seeing them differently than he ever had before. Each point of light represented a world, possibly inhabited by beings who might have their own forms of strength. For 3 millennia, the Cathara had seen only enemies to conquer or slaves to control. But what if they were wrong? What if the galaxy was full of potential allies they had never bothered to understand? Signal the fleet, Zextal said slowly. Cease all offensive operations. Veltar's eyes widened. Commander, and send a message to the humans, Zextal continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. Tell them that Commander Zextal wishes to discuss terms. Not terms of surrender, but terms for building something entirely new. Something that would transform both species and possibly the entire galaxy.
The strongest Deathworld species had
Finally encountered humanity, and in learning what it truly meant to be strong. They were about to become something far greater than either race could imagine alone. The age of conquest was ending, and the age of cooperation was about to begin.